All right. Welcome, guys. How's it going? This is me, Dragos, and this is the Dragos Energy Podcast. I'm currently doing this episode from Eindhoven, the Netherlands. I'm currently in the Netherlands, as you can see, represent from the colors. But I've done a couple of shows in the past week. It's been super tiring. So now I'm taking a bit of a break today. I'm gonna go and do some shows in Amsterdam tomorrow, and also Monday we're gonna do shows there. And the shows, fortunately for moi, they are currently sold out. So good, thank you. It seems like the shows are getting sold out faster now, which is great. And it's great to see that in the past 4 years, things have kind of progressed in a very, very positive direction, despite the challenges that we've had at the global scale, right? 2019, it was difficult to get venues. A lot of people around Europe weren't too familiar with stand-up comedy, I guess. A lot of people were not really introduced to the concept of stand-up comedy. I remember doing a lot of shows in like pubs and bars, and it was mostly exclusivistically to the expat communities. And I do remember even at that time, I had like a joke that I would open the show with, make some noise if you're from this country, and then maybe like small portion of the audience would clap, which made it funny. And then I would do the other one. The second question would be make some noise if you're not from this country, and then more of the audience, 70% upwards, would clap. And then the third question I would do as part of the rule of three would be like make some noise if you've ever heard of me, and there'd be no clapping at all. So that would be kind of the intro joke. So it's very humbling, and I feel very grateful to see that now, and we're in this position. We're in this position. I'm in this position now where the shows are kind of getting sold out before I even get to the city. Like, for example, I have London next week, and all three shows, almost 400 tickets, are sold like 10 days before the show. So it's great. It's really like pretty crazy, and a big part of like all this growth. The reason for this has been a lot of the consistency in filming and reviewing the material constantly. Um, I remember like in I think it was the fourth month of 2019. I think it was after the first couple of shows I did in Dublin. The first show I did in Dublin, basically I was like, fuck, I need to get a camera to film these shows so I can rewatch and give some opinions so I can improve my material. So 4 months after going full time, I decided to buy a camera, and I think it was one of the best kind of calls I've made at the time because I was able to save all the footage, and I had the hindsight of saving the footage. And because of all that footage was saved, when the pandemic in 2020 came, so I started doing comedy full time ish 2019 start, and the pandemic came 1 year later. So what aggressive timing, am I right? Had I waited 1 more year, I would have probably had to delay the starting of the comedy by at least 2 or 3 years, right? Because of the chaos that had befallen the world of man. And because I had all this footage in 2020 when the pandemic came, I had the opportunity to kind of review it, edit it. And then when one of my fans sent me a message, and they said basically, Drago, you should definitely start putting stuff on TikTok. And this particular person, I found out mistaken, was from Helsinki or Finland, Sweden, I think, if I'm not mistaken. And because of this, basically, I started putting out stuff on TikTok, and 3 years later, the TikTok audience almost 650,000 people, almost close to 650. I think it's 642 at the moment. So it's been quite a wild ride. Of course, at the moment it is no longer enough to just be a comedian, as you might have been able to tell from the past couple of years. Writing jokes and doing comedy is unfortunately not sufficient because you also have to be somewhat proficient in video editing, social media presence, posting, understanding algorithms, understanding hooks, messages in videos, length of videos, and how to optimize your content for better delivery online, right? Because you have these two-part process where you have the content creation, where you're creating the product, and then you have the distribution aspect where you have to get the product out there to people. So I feel like there's been a lot of learning going into these two categories, and this life that requires creativity and also constant posting. But I do feel now like when looking at these shows have been doing so well and selling out, I do feel like it's been pretty much worth it, right? And the challenge before me at the moment is how to kind of I always have this difficulty once I've always had it, but it once so far. But the difficulty is once you write a comedy hour and you've been working on it for a couple of years, you go back into this process of writing a new one, and you're always like a little bit, oh my god, how is this going to be as good as the last one? Wow, I can't believe that those jokes were so good, and how did I come up with them, and how am I going to come up with better ones? So you're always kind of like in the situation like, how can I top the last hour? And I always have to remind myself that it's not about topping the last tower. It's about creating a whole new organism from scratch that stands by itself. And many a times it does have some inspiration in previous works of material, but the constant is that if you want to kind of keep improving and doing well, you have to continuously write and explore new topics, and you have to kind of read extensively, and you have to continuously feed yourself with inspiration. I think this is one of the things about comedy that nobody really kind of talks about, the importance of constantly feeding new pieces of information that will act as inspiration going forward. And towards this end, because of this I've basically restarted my reading because I think it's very important to read extensively if you want to write jokes that have new flavors, new ideas. And at the moment, this week I reread, because we did read it in high school, I reread The Old Man and the Sea by Hemingway, Ernest Hemingway, because I want to do some jokes around that. And I've been also reading a couple of books, just like I'm trying to keep it as broad as possible. I read, and by read, I mean using Audible. I don't have a subscription link to Audible yet where you can use my link, but I'll probably set one up soon. So if you want to get Audible, you should definitely do it because it's quite worth it. I have this subscription where it gives me 2 credits a month. So that means I can basically read 2 books a month, and at the end of the year, that's all 24. So these things can add up quite fast. But the other 2 books I've read at the start of this year, one of them was, so we've got the Hemingway one, The Old Man and the Sea. I've also read More Money Than God, which is a story about, it's just a book about the hedge fund industry. I heard a couple of people talking about it, and I was like, oh, More Money Than God. I really like it. Sometimes if you had a good name, that's kind of like all you need as a hook to get the audience in. And I think that's all I needed for this particular book. And I found it quite interesting. It talks about like the hedge fund industry, George Soros, a couple of other hedge fund managers that were doing quite interesting stuff. They crashed the pound in the 80s, if I'm not mistaken, and they did some other shenanigans with the Asian financial crisis. And it was interesting to see the perspective pointed out as hedge funds being good and bad, being able to serve both kind of purposes, right? Acting as an instrument of correction in financial markets, and at the same time as an instrument of exploitation, I guess, that can damage different societies and countries. And then because of that was quite an interesting book, I went and I checked out another one, which is called The Man Who Solved the Markets, because he was mentioned in the first More Money Than God book, and this book is about the hedge fund called a hedge fund called I think if I'm not mistaken, it's Renaissance by Jim Collins. I'll double check it, but this guy basically was one of the first consistently successful quantitative trading firms. And what does that mean? It means basically he used completely only algorithms to trade. Well, not exclusively algorithms, but mostly algorithms to do electronic trading, which I think now is normalized, but he was one of the first ones. And I think one of the elements that interested me in wanting to check out this book in more detail was the fact that they were able to generate consistent returns over a long period of time. I think it was like 40% a year, year over year. And people are saying it's like even more successful than what's his name, Warren Buffett and other type of investors, right? So I thought it was interesting to kind of check out that. It was an interesting read. I don't do much investing or anything of the sort in terms of hedge fund activity, but I thought it's good to kind of dive into different areas that you're not familiar with to maybe get some understanding of different concepts, and maybe one day they will be able to come into the comedy in the form of an analogy of something of these sorts. Yes, it's important to be able to create analogies. In the world at the moment, things have kind of quieted down. It has been a bit of a wild month. I think the biggest piece of news in the world was the Turkey earthquake, which was devastating. It is devastating. Natural disaster on the scope of like over 40,000, I think even 50,000 victims. It was pretty intense. And I tried to do a bit of awareness raising online with it and advise people to raise funds. So if you want to raise funds, there's a link in bio. You can still donate. This February we have also had 1 year. It's been 1 year since the war in Ukraine started, which again another source of misery for the world. You have this earthquake this month, and then you also have the celebration, the marking point of 1 year since Russia invaded Ukraine and basically displaced millions of people. The Ukrainians are in a very tough position at the moment, and it's quite. I mean, especially I remember like when the war started, it was I was quite. It did affect me emotionally quite a lot because I feel like from perspective of a Romanian, I felt like this could have easily been us, right? And sometimes how you are put in these positions where you have to deal with these unfavorable circumstances, but just by the nature of where you're born, right? Because like if it wasn't Ukraine, it was Moldova and then Romania. So I always felt like this was a bit of an unfair situation and just denying the existence of the Ukrainian people from the perspective of the current idiotic Russian regime. I do have a lot of empathy with this. So yeah, it was quite an interesting point to kind of analyze my own emotions in this fact. So I do hope these things will come to an end soon. I'm also a little bit stuttering thinking about it because it's such a topic. But I have been, seeing a lot of Ukrainians coming to the show, and many of them have been um, thankful for me kind of like, bringing it up in my jokes and kind of trying to raise awareness of the situation and make sure people haven't forgotten because it was interesting when I was in Mexico, you know, this is proximity. Proximity is such a big thing in relevancy, right? Proximity is a big thing in relevancy because when I was in Mexico, not a lot of people were thinking about the war in Ukraine, right? But of course, when you're in Berlin, it's a lot more present, from the aspect, especially winter with the gas situation. Where I live now, I think they do kind of limit the temperature of the building to like 17 degrees is the max you can heat it up. And at nights as well, sometimes it gets a bit colder. But of course, it's nothing compared to the suffering of people in Kiev and over Ukraine, right? So it's interesting to see how like being closer to it, of course, not just culturally but also geographically affects your mood and your mindset in a completely different way. And I can only imagine how people from Ukraine feel every day, right? When I was in Mexico, of course, this was not something all that important, which is why I was so annoyed at the start of the year when you had this whole Andrew Tate thing, because I felt like it was just taking so much attention away from serious issues that needed more coverage and needed more exposure. But then, of course, the Andrew Tate discourse of women are inferior and men are superior, it also creates another layer of dystopian imbalance, right? Dystopian imbalance. Should be using this word a lot more. I've kind of fallen a bit back on my Spanish. I need to kind of get back on the Spanish horse and practice mi español. I think I have been promising a Spanish podcast. I have failed to deliver so far, but I remain optimistic. And this is why I keep trying to do these little podcasts and vlogs in my hotel room, because hopefully if I can build the cadence and the habit, I will be able to deliver these more regularly and eventually do the Romanian and the Spanish one. I think the problem so far has been I'm kind of over engineering it. I'm over complicating it. I'm trying to get the color correction right. I'm trying to get the the editing right, which I think is definitely overthinking it. I think people do appreciate it. I think with the videos on TikTok and on Reels, so you guys can get an understanding of where it is coming from, you do need to kind of be a bit more specific. The colors have to be in a good direction. They have to look okay. So a lot of times I have a Sony camera, two Sony cameras actually, and I film in this format called S-Log, which allows you to gain a little bit more control of the colors in post-production. Like for example, now I'm filming in a hotel room, so then sometimes there's not enough light. So if you do have this S-Log function, you can be able to tweak the exposure, contrast, other kind of things in post-production. So I think I've been taking this kind of mindset to the podcasting vlog ecosystem, which is probably not the best idea, because I think this needs to be instead of it being more specific and like perfectly edited or anything of the sorts, it just has to be more raw and more authentic and just be put out there consistently, so people can kind of like share their thoughts on it, suggest topics, and so on and so forth. I will be doing 2 more shows in Berlin on the 19th and 20th of March, and the next one is already on the 9th of March, but I believe it's already sold out in Berlin at Caracas Bar, and I'll be trying to do some more. But in the context of these shows, I'm going to do one that is more material, which I'm currently in the process of refining the material, but I also want to start doing more improv shows. So I was thinking of doing a show based on me and riffing with the audience on hot topics and hot gossip. So hopefully, if this is something that you're interested in, you might be able to see a show on the 19th and 20th in Berlin around these topics, hot gossip and hot topics. We'll see exactly how that ends up. So hopefully we'll merge these three different. Well, I was thinking doing relationships as well, but let's see how that goes. Let's see. These are the plans at the moment, and I will be in the process of setting up some more shows for the coming weeks. I'm gonna go to Zurich in April, and hopefully a couple more places in Switzerland. And at the same time, hopefully we can arrange some things in Turkey. We were looking at this as well in Istanbul, potentially Bulgaria, Albania, Croatia, Serbia, the Balkans, of course. Maybe we can do something in Brussels. I have not done Norway or Sweden this year, so hopefully those will be on the list alongside Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, and Polandia. So let's see. You might be thinking, Dragos, but where's Hungary, Slovenia, Slovakia, and Austria? Well, hopefully those as well in the very near future. I already have Barcelona and Milan set up, and I'm having some difficulties finding venues from Madrid, but hopefully they will be coming in the very near future as well. I think that this is pretty much it. I think at the moment I'm slowly coming into the checkout period. So I hope this podcast is concise. It has given you into some insight into what I'm up to at the moment. And if you're happy with the level of quality of this, maybe we will get a lot more in the coming weeks. So thank you very much for checking it out. Subscribe to the channel. Let me know what topics you'd like to discuss, and hopefully we'll do more of these as the